the earliest madhab that we have evidence about, or at least the person, would be Abu Hanifa, who precedes in the story Malik. Malik is next. Now, when the Abbasids take control of the empire around the year 749, Abu Hanifa very quickly is put into prison, and he's left to rot and die in prison. He's not allowed to be fed, and he dies in prison, eating food from other inmates, like, for example, the founder of a type of Karaite Judaism called Anan ben David, who's supposed to have been inspired by Abu Hanifa when he was in prison. Meanwhile, Malik became the golden boy of the Abbasid empire, and basically Abbasid Islam sort of started with him. Then they also say that had students like Shafi, who also decided to go over and serve the Abbasids, and Shafi's student was Hanbal, who also served the Abbasid agenda. And each time they're getting more and more strict. So Malik is more strict, and Shafi is more strict, and Hanbalis are even more strict at the end. Ahmad ibn Hanbal, his name was, the Hanbali madhab comes from him. And then from the Hanbali madhab comes basically Salafism as we know it, and Wahhabism as we know it. So it's getting more and more, what you can say, almost fanatical, and developing more and more into what we understand as modern Islam. I should just clarify that all of these madhabs are trying to talk about what can we take from hadiths, from narrations, from sayings of other people. What can we take as valid, and what we can't take as valid? So the Maliki madhab from Imam Malik, he put together what's called the Muwatta, which is a collection of about 3,000 hadiths, and said, that's it. These are the hadiths, these ones are the valid ones, and this is what we're going to follow. This is what I've understood. So, you know, I'm open to correction on this, but as far as I've understood, he put together this Muwatta, which is a collection of hadiths, and he said, these are our hadiths, we'll go with these, and we'll base our understanding of the religion upon these hadiths. Then Shafi says, well, we can accept more than that, and Hanbal accepts more than that. So, but they have different criteria for how they're going to accept the hadiths. But the interesting thing about Abu Hanifa, according to what we know, what they say about him, is that Abu Hanifa's criteria was this. He said that we can accept any hadith which does not cause contradiction in the Quran, in our understanding of, as the Quran would explain itself. If it doesn't cause contradiction in the Quran and it doesn't contradict the Quran, then we can accept it as a description of what might have been happening. And this actually is very interesting because it's significantly different. If you take it literally at its word, it causes a significantly different form of Islam from everybody else's, and that's possibly why they threw him into prison, why the Abbasids threw him into prison. And of course, the story is that this form of Karaite Judaism he's actually the father of a form of Karaite Judaism through his contact with Anan ben David. There's a group of Karaites from Eastern Europe who are called the Karaim or Karaimlar, and they say that they are a branch of the Hanifa madhab because Abu Hanifa was basically Anan ben David's teacher. Okay, that's different from what other Karaites say, and it's not a mainstream view among them, but that is what the ones from Crimea actually say. So that's interesting because it makes a kind of a connection between Karaites and Imam Abu Hanifa himself, who was essentially the sort of the representative of the late Umayyad religion. So the late Umayyad religion is basically represented by him, and that's also confirmed by the fact that the Umayyads survived in Andalusia, and they were Hanafis as well. So that is also sort of confirmed. And again, it was the Hanafi madhab mostly survived amongst the Turks in the far north. The Seljuks, when they came back down, they brought back the Hanafi madhab, which had been sort of crushed out of existence by the Abbasids. And because of their total war approach, the other Muslims made a deal with them that they would acknowledge the Hanafi madhab as an equal madhab alongside the Shafi and the Maliki and the Hanbali madhab, and those became the 4 official madhabs of fiqh for the Sunni religion. So it wasn't accepted and wasn't popular with the Abbasids, but because of the Seljuks and the total war that they brought with them, it was restored. So we can say that this Turkic Hanafi or Central Asian sort of Hanafi religion and the version as it was in Spain is representing late Umayyad religion. And that's quite interesting because I've had quite a lot of encounter with Turkic Muslims from say Russia and Central Asia and even Turkey. And the ones that I've met have had no problem drinking, which is interesting because we saw that reference to a gift being sent from the Umayyad Caliph to the Chinese emperor, and it was a wine cup, so indicating that there was no problem for drinking amongst them. So that was an interesting thing. And I think that can come down to this idea that, as Abu Hanifa said, we can't accept any hadith which causes us to interpret the Quran in a way which contradicts the Quran, or any hadith which contradicts the Quran at all. And one of the things that the Quran says, and by the way, also before I go on, the point about the abrogation of the previous scriptures was brought up by somebody called Ibn Hazm, who was actually after Abu Hanifa. So that would be a concept which wasn't necessarily known by Abu Hanifa, especially when he says that you can't accept any hadith which causes a contradiction with the Quran. If you take the Quran at its word, it tells us that it confirms and it acknowledges the divinely revealed scriptures, what's called in Persian they call Chor Kitab, the four books, the 4 holy books, which are the Quran, the Zabur, the Injil, and the Torah. So we understand from this sort of Central Asian Hanafi sort of approach that these are 4 sacred books and they're not abrogated, they're not cancelled, they're confirmed, which is in keeping with what Abu Hanifa says. You can't contradict the Quran. The Quran doesn't say anywhere that these books are abrogated or cancelled. It says that they're confirmed and that the Christians have to rule themselves by the gospel, and the Jews have to rule themselves by the Torah. So, and it's really strongly emphasizing that you have to go to ask the people of the book if you have a question, etc. So, and the people of the book is obviously the people of the Bible. It's not the people of the Hindu scriptures, for example. It's not the people of the Buddhist scriptures. It's very clear what's being mentioned in the Quran. So Abu Hanifa's understanding, it's not been written down, it's all from hearsay, but that key point that he says nothing that contradicts the Quran would lead us to the conclusion that his understanding of how to read the Quran would be in a way which was in harmony with the previous books, which means that we have to understand some verses radically different, in a radically different way from the way Islam today understands those verses, if we want to understand them the way Abu Hanifa understood them. And that can lead us to understand how the Abbasids wanted to get rid of him. And it also helps us understand why Abdul Malik's writings around the Dome of the Rock don't seem to be having any mention of anything other than basically Moses and Jesus. And even the reference to Muhammad might not even be the word or a name of a prophet, but again, just another descriptive word for Jesus himself. So that is very much sort of tying in with all of this view, the view that the Quran doesn't contradict the previous scriptures. So what I'm suggesting is that what we've got with Abu Hanifa and his madhab is a kind of a revised Sadducean, because you know the Karaites are very close to Sadducee in their religion, the modern Karaites are. So, and if he was involved in influencing the Karaites, that there was probably a kind of a Sadducean religion which had been evolved or affected by the influence of the Edomians, who I think that Ali was from that side of things. And so you've got this Ishmaelite Sadducee group. I've explained before the relationship between Ishmaelites and Sadducees, who were influenced by Edomian people like Ali, and had a revised Ishmaelite Sadducee religion, which was being represented by Abu Hanifa towards the end, which wasn't in contradiction to the scriptures, but had its own sort of developed or adopted from the Edomians some Mishnah, and developed its own sort of approach to things, a kind of a early Karaite approach, I can't say early Karaite Sadducean religion, which was then influential upon Anan ben David when he met Abu Hanifa in prison, and learned how he could establish a form of Judaism which would get him off the hook from the punishment which Anan ben David was facing. So Anan ben David went out and, taking Abu Hanifa's advice, presented his ideas to the Caliph and was allowed to start his own sect, which became Karaite Judaism. So I think that we may be looking at a kind of a revised Sadducean, halfway between Sadducee, and Karaite sort of religion there, which had been affected by the Edomian ideas, and that is what Abu Hanifa was representing. And I think what I'm trying to say is that if you just take that one sentence again and again and really apply it rationally and say nothing that contradicts the Quran, we don't accept any interpretation which contradicts the Quran, means you can throw away a lot of the Sirah, you can throw away a lot of the way the modern Islamic religion is. You don't have to follow it in the way that all the other madhabs are doing it. You can literally look at the Quran and say, okay, this is supposed to be in harmony with the previous books. That's what it says. So let me try and understand it in a way that would be in harmony with those previous books. And that is the Ishmaelite religion that I will follow if you were an Ishmaelite. So I'm suggesting that's a possible way of approaching things. Okay, so that's all I've got to say on the matter. I'll be ending the broadcast now. Thank you for watching.